She was my teacher once. Not in a classroom anymore, not with chalk dust on her hands or the smell of old books in the air, but she still had that same stillness, that quiet control that made people lower their voices around her. I hadn't seen her in years. And yet, when I walked into that cafe and saw her sitting alone by the window, I forgot every reason I had for being there. She looked the same, almost. Her hair a little shorter, streaked with silver that caught the morning light. The kind of change that didn't dull her, it refined her, like time had decided to sculpt instead of erase. She lifted her cup, fingers steady, wrist elegant, eyes fixed on something outside that only she could see. For a moment I watched her the way you might watch a flame, close enough to feel the heat but too far to touch. I told myself not to say anything. But then she turned, just slightly, and her gaze caught mine. Daniel? My name sounded different from her lips. Softer, slower. Like she was testing if it still belonged to me. Hi, I said, trying not to sound 20 again. Her smile was small but real. You look older. So do you, I said, then immediately regretted it. Her laugh, quiet, breathy, broke something open between us. She gestured to the seat across from her. Still blunt, I see. I sat down. The cafe hummed around us, spoons clinking, low chatter, the hiss of milk steaming. But between us, everything felt too still. She adjusted her sleeve, revealing the thin line of a bracelet I remembered she used to wear. I wondered if she noticed me noticing. You're teaching now, aren't you? She asked. Trying to, I said. Different field. Less inspiring lectures. She smiled again, but there was something unreadable behind it. Maybe pride. Maybe distance. Her hand brushed the edge of her cup, her nails tapping once, twice. The kind of small rhythm you only notice when you're paying attention. I always thought you'd do well, she said. That shouldn't have meant so much. But it did. And I didn't know what to do with that. For a moment neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't awkward, not exactly. It was something heavier. She looked out the window again, her reflection floating beside mine on the glass. I could see how the corner of her mouth tensed slightly, how she bit her lip before letting go. Do you ever miss it? I asked quietly. She turned back to me. Teaching? I nodded. She hesitated, eyes soft but guarded. Some days. But not the way I thought I would. There was something in the way she said it, like she was answering a different question entirely. Her phone buzzed on the table, lighting up her face for a second. She glanced at the screen, then back at me. The spell we'd been pretending wasn't there started to crack. I should, she began. Yeah, I said, standing a beat too late. She looked at me, really looked, and for the first time, I noticed the way her breath caught before she spoke. You still don't know when to stop staring, do you? I wanted to answer, to joke, to say anything that might keep her there a little longer. But before I could, someone called her name from the counter. A man's voice. She turned, smile polite, tone careful. And as she stood, I caught her hand brushing mine, maybe by accident, maybe not. Warm. Real. Enough to leave a trace. When she walked away, I stayed seated, pretending I still had a reason to be there. Outside, the light shifted, soft, golden, and I realized I'd forgotten what I came in for. Then, just before the door closed behind her, she glanced back once. No words. Just silence, and all the things I still didn't understand it meant. It was 2 weeks before I saw her again. She came to one of my evening lectures, unannounced, sitting quietly near the back. The kind of student who didn't take notes, but never looked away. I almost forgot what I was saying halfway through. After class, most of the others filtered out with the usual chatter. She stayed seated, her coat draped over one arm, expression unreadable. When the last door clicked shut, I walked over, my pulse unreasonably fast. You didn't tell me you were coming, I said. She smiled faintly. I wasn't sure I would. I laughed, mostly to fill the quiet. Checking if I learn anything from you? Maybe, she said. Maybe just curious. She followed me as I packed up, the sound of paper and zippers loud in the empty room. The air was thick with something unsaid, the kind of weight that comes from two people trying not to step back or forward. "I heard you moved back recently," I said. She nodded. "A few months ago. My mother's not well." Needed to be closer. Something in her tone softened, and for a moment, the distance between us didn't feel so impossible. "I'm sorry," I said, meaning it. She looked down. "You always were too kind for your own good." It wasn't the words, it was how she said them, like kindness was a flaw she remembered too clearly. Her marriage had ended years ago. I knew that from whispers, from the awkward mentions when I used to be her student. Rumors said her husband had left. She never corrected them. And now, standing here again, I realized she wore no ring. "I didn't expect to see you teaching," she said after a moment. "I didn't expect you to show up in the back row," I answered. Her eyes lifted, and something flickered there, something that made me want to move closer and made her want to step back at the same time. She didn't. Neither did I. When she finally spoke again, her voice was quieter. "You shouldn't look at me like that." "Like what?" I asked, even though I already knew. "Like I'm still someone you're supposed to impress." The words landed harder than I expected. I turned away, pretending to check the projector, the floor, anything that wasn't her. But then I felt it, her hand, light on my shoulder, the faintest pressure. Just a second too long before she withdrew. "I'm sorry," she murmured, though I wasn't sure for what. The scent of her perfume lingered, subtle, the same one I remembered from late afternoons in the old classroom, when sunlight hit the chalkboard just right. It brought back everything I'd buried, how I'd stayed after hours, pretending to ask questions I already knew the answers to. How she'd smiled like she knew it, too. When I turned back, she was closer than before. Not by much, just enough that I could see the fine lines around her eyes, the steadiness of her breath. Her gaze flicked down, then up again, landing somewhere between defiance and apology. "I missed this," she said, so softly I almost thought I imagined it. I didn't ask what she meant. The silence between us said enough. Outside, the hallway lights dimmed automatically. She hesitated, then brushed her fingers along the edge of my hand, slow, uncertain, before pulling away. "I should go," she whispered. And though she did, her warmth stayed long after she left, a trace that made the room feel smaller, the air heavier, and every reason I had for staying away a little harder to remember. It happened on a Thursday evening, after the rain. She had offered to meet me at the small library near campus, neutral ground she'd called it. The place was nearly empty, the air cool and smelling faintly of dust and paper. Outside, the sky was bruised purple, the last drops sliding down the window panes. She was standing near the poetry shelf when I walked in, one hand tracing the spine of a book she wasn't really reading. "You're late," she said, not looking at me. "I waited outside. Didn't want to assume." Her mouth twitched into something between a smile and a sigh. "You still overthink everything." I stepped closer. "You still make it hard not to." The quiet between us stretched again, not empty this time, but electric. I watched the way her fingers paused on the edge of the shelf, how she didn't pull them back when mine brushed past. The air shifted, tight and fragile, like it could break if either of us breathed too hard. "Someone could see us," she said finally. "No one's here," I whispered. She turned to face me then, slow, deliberate. "That's not the point." Her eyes searched mine, as if waiting for me to say something that would make it all simpler. I didn't have it. I only had the sound of rain outside and the pulse in my throat. "I keep telling myself this is harmless," she said. "And is it?" She hesitated. "I don't know anymore." Her phone buzzed from inside her coat. The sound startled us both, sharp, intrusive. She pulled it out, glanced at the screen, and silenced it without answering. I caught a glimpse of a name, maybe her sister's, maybe someone else's, before she slid the phone away. "You should answer," I said. "Not now." There was something final in her tone. She stepped closer, close enough that I could see the tiny drops of rain still clinging to her hair. My hand rose before I could stop it, just to tuck one behind her ear, nothing more. But my fingers brushed her skin, and suddenly that small, innocent gesture didn't feel small at all. Her breath hitched, audible, barely. "Daniel!" I froze. "Sorry. I don't." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Please don't apologize for everything." We stood like that, a breath apart, the world narrowing to the space between our mouths. I could see her chest rise, the faint tremor in her jaw, the way her gaze flicked to my lips and back again. The moment stretched, fragile, infinite. Then footsteps echoed from the hallway. She stepped back instantly, pretending to look for a book. My hand dropped, my heart still hammering. A student, one of mine, appeared at the doorway, waving politely before disappearing again. The sound of his shoes faded, leaving the silence sharp and uneven. Her shoulders relaxed, but her eyes stayed on me. "You see?" she whispered. "This is exactly why." I nodded, but it didn't help. Because she didn't move away again, not completely. We stayed there, too close, pretending the near miss hadn't changed anything. She reached out, just once, her fingertips grazing mine where they rested on the table. The touch was so faint it might have been accidental. But when she drew her hand back, she kept part of me with it, that quiet pull either of us wanted to name. When she finally left, the rain had stopped, but everything still felt damp, unfinished. The space where she'd stood seemed to hum, like her absence had weight. I didn't follow. But I didn't move either. I told myself I wouldn't see her again. That promise lasted 3 days. She showed up at my office door just after dusk, her hand still on the frame when I looked up. No explanation, no smile. Just eyes that seemed tired of pretending. "Do you have a minute?" she asked. I didn't answer, only moved aside so she could step in. The room was small, warm, filled with the faint scent of coffee and paper. The air shifted when she entered, like everything inside had been waiting for her. She sat on the edge of my desk, crossing her arms. "You've been avoiding me. I thought that's what you wanted." Her gaze sharpened. "That's not what I said. But it's what you meant." She exhaled through her nose, frustration and something softer mixing in the sound. "You think this is easy for me?" "No," I said. "I think it's impossible." That stopped her. Her hands unfolded, fingers tracing the corner of a notebook. "You're too young to talk like that." "I'm old enough to mean it." The words came out rougher than I expected. She looked at me, really looked, the way she used to when I stumbled over a question in class, waiting for me to find the right answer. But this time, there wasn't one. "I shouldn't have come," she said, standing too quickly. Before I could think, I reached out, caught her wrist, light enough to let her pull away, firm enough that she didn't. She froze. The pulse beneath my fingers was fast, alive. "Then why did you?" I asked quietly. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Instead, she sat back down, slower this time. The distance between us closed to inches. "Because I can't stop thinking about you," she said, almost inaudibly. The words hung there, fragile and irreversible. My breath caught, and for a second, the world narrowed to her. The smell of rain in her hair, the faint warmth radiating through her sleeve, the tremor in her hand when she brushed it through her hair. "I shouldn't have said that," she murmured. "I'm glad you did." She laughed once, brokenly. "You don't know what this could do to me." "I know," I said. "And I still." Her fingers pressed against my chest, stopping the rest. The touch wasn't forceful, just desperate, a plea and a warning at once. "Don't finish that." Her hand lingered there longer than it should have. My heartbeat thudded under her palm. She looked down at it, then up at me, her face too close, her breath brushing the side of my jaw. "This isn't fair," she whispered. "Then tell me to stop." Her eyes lifted, glassy, searching. "You wouldn't." I swallowed. "Try me." The silence cracked between us. She moved first, or maybe I did, just enough that our foreheads almost touched. Her hand slid up, tracing the edge of my jaw, then paused, trembling. I could feel her breath, warm, uneven. The sound of footsteps in the hallway broke everything. We both froze. She turned her head slightly, eyes closing as if in pain. "You should lock the door," she whispered, not as a suggestion, but a confession she wished she hadn't made. The footsteps passed, fading. She didn't move away. Her lips parted, her voice a thread. "Daniel, if I stay..." But she didn't finish. And I didn't let her. The next morning, I found her waiting outside the lecture hall. No warning, no message, just there, standing by the notice board like she was trying to blend into the space she didn't belong in anymore. She looked different in daylight, not softer, but more exposed. Tired eyes, a careful stillness in her shoulders. "We need to talk," she said. I followed her to the courtyard behind the building, where the air smelled like wet leaves and chalk dust. Students passed by on the far side, laughing, their voices distant but too close all the same. She kept glancing toward them, as if every laugh might turn into a whisper about us. "What happened?" I asked. Her arms folded, not for warmth, for defense. "Someone saw us last night." My stomach dropped. "Who?" "I don't know. But I got a message this morning, from a colleague." She hesitated. "He asked if I was spending late nights mentoring the new staff again." The way she said it, brittle, embarrassed, made my chest tighten. "Do you think he... I don't know what he thinks," she cut in, voice sharper now. "But it doesn't matter. This was a mistake." It took me a second to find words. "You don't mean that?" Her eyes flicked up, conflicted. "I mean... I should." For a long moment neither of us spoke. The wind moved through the trees, scattering leaves between our feet. She looked anywhere but at me. Then, quieter. "You don't understand what this could cost me." "I do," I said. "But I also know you came here to tell me yourself, not in an email, not over the phone. You could have stayed away." She blinked, a flicker of something breaking through her composure. "You think that means something? It means you didn't want to end it." Her hands trembled slightly, hidden in the folds of her coat. She stepped closer, too close, her perfume cutting through the autumn air. "You make everything sound simple. Because I don't know how else to think about you," I said. That silenced her. Her breathing slowed, her gaze softened but didn't falter. For a heartbeat, she let herself look at me the way I'd been looking at her, like she was memorizing something she shouldn't want. Then she said it, quietly, but enough to undo me. "I told myself I was protecting you," she whispered. "But maybe I was just protecting myself." Her voice shook on the last word, like the truth had splintered inside it. She turned away quickly, brushing past me, but the edge of her hand grazed mine, a flash of warmth, enough to leave everything tangled again. "Tell me it's over," I said. She stopped, shoulders tense. "I can't." The space between us felt too small, too dangerous. She turned back, eyes bright with something she couldn't hide anymore. "If anyone asks," she said softly, "we barely speak." "And if no one asks?" Her answer came after a long, trembling pause. "Then I'll stop pretending I don't wait for you." She walked away before I could move. But her words stayed, echoing through me, rewriting every boundary we thought we had. By the time I realized I was following her with my eyes, it was already too late to pretend I wasn't going to follow for real. Night had fallen by the time I reached her house. I didn't plan to go. I told myself it was just to talk, to make sense of what she'd said that morning. But when she opened the door, the words I'd rehearsed disappeared. She stood there barefoot, her sweater hanging loose on one shoulder, hair slightly damp as if she just showered. The soft lamplight behind her made the moment feel suspended, like we'd stepped outside of time. "Daniel," she said quietly, not surprised. "You shouldn't be here." "I know." We stared at each other for a long, uncertain beat. Then she stepped aside and let me in. The room was small and warm, filled with the faint scent of rain and vanilla. Books lined the walls, a half-finished glass of wine sat on the table. She crossed her arms, more out of habit than comfort, watching me with a mix of caution and something she didn't want to name. "You came to fix this?" she asked. I shook my head. "No. I came because I can't pretend anymore." Her eyes softened. "You think I can?" We stood close enough now that I could feel her breath against my collarbone. My pulse wouldn't steady. She looked up, eyes searching mine, waiting for me to say what she couldn't. "This has to stop," she said finally. "Then stop me." She inhaled sharply, her composure faltering. "Don't make this harder. I'm not trying to. I just..." My voice cracked. "I don't know how to stop wanting you." The words hung there, raw and irreversible. She stepped back, but only halfway. Her hand found the edge of the table behind her, gripping it like she needed something solid. "You think this is just want?" I shook my head. "It never was." Her throat worked as if she were swallowing everything she wanted to say. "You're too young to carry this. And you're too afraid to let it happen." That broke her silence. She moved toward me, not quickly, not deliberately, just one step that changed everything. The space between us vanished. Her hand lifted, brushing my cheek, then trailing down to rest against my chest. My heart hammered against her palm. "Tell me this isn't wrong," she whispered. I didn't. I couldn't. Her breath trembled as she leaned closer, close enough that I could feel the heat of her skin, smelled the faint trace of wine on her lips. Every second stretched thin, balanced on the edge of something irreversible. My hand rose to her shoulder, fingers grazing the side of her neck. She didn't move away. The world went silent, no rain, no clocks, no sound except the unsteady rhythm between us. Then a sound, her phone vibrating against the table. She froze. The light from the screen glowed across her face, her name reflected in my eyes. She looked at it, then at me. A long pause. Finally, she reached over and silenced it without answering. Her voice came low, almost breaking. "I'm tired of choosing fear." She looked up, and for the first time, there was no hesitation in her eyes. Whatever came next, we both knew it would change everything. The morning light was soft, diffused through thin curtains that turned it golden. For a moment neither of us spoke. The air felt fragile, as if a single wrong word might shatter it. She sat beside me on the edge of the couch, hair loose, one hand curled around a mug she wasn't drinking from. The night storm had passed, but its echo lingered, in the quiet, in the way we avoided each other's eyes. "I should feel worse than I do," she said finally. I looked at her. "And do you?" She smiled faintly, not quite proud, not quite sorry. "No." I laughed under my breath, more out of relief than amusement. The tension between us wasn't gone, but it had changed shape, less fire, more warmth. Something real. She set her mug down, turning toward me. "You still think this can work?" "I think it already does," I said. "It's just not supposed to." Her gaze dropped to her hands. "You make it sound easy. It isn't. But it's honest." A silence stretched between us, not awkward but full. The kind that says everything words can't. When she finally met my eyes again, something in hers had settled. Acceptance. Maybe even peace. "I'm tired of being afraid," she said softly. "Of what people might think. Of how it might end." "Then don't be," I whispered. She nodded, almost to herself, and then, gently, almost cautiously, reached for my hand. Her fingers brushed mine first, then intertwined fully. The contact was simple, grounding. No pretense left. For a while, we just sat there. Her thumb traced slow circles against my skin, her head leaning lightly on my shoulder. Outside, the world moved on, students walking by, buses humming in the distance, but inside, time held still. "This isn't going to be easy," she said. "I don't want easy," I answered. "I want this." She exhaled, a quiet sound that was half a laugh, half a sigh. "You always say things like that." "Because they're true." Her hand squeezed mine once more before resting in my lap. Then, with a warmth that felt like the answer to every question we hadn't asked, she leaned in and kissed me, not with urgency, but with calm certainty. The kind of kiss that says we're here now, and that's enough. When we finally pulled apart, she stayed close, forehead resting against mine. Her breath was steady, mine wasn't. "Whatever happens," she murmured, "I'm not running anymore." "Good," I said, smiling. "Neither am I." Outside, the morning brightened. The storm had left the world clean again, not erased, but renewed. And as we sat there, fingers still intertwined, sunlight catching the edges of her hair, I knew the truth of it all: some choices don't end things. They begin them.